Happy Saturday. I'm going to try to make this one rather quick. I grabbed a few pieces from Kool's service last night in Graham, which would have been July 20th, 2023. And I want to first apologize for the background noise. It's funny because I plugged in headphones to my computer thinking that the screen capture would just grab the sound of the video, but it grabbed the chair I was sitting in, typing and breathing and moving. So I honestly did not want to play it again and listen to it again. It's an arduous task as it is. So I just want to apologize for that. The main purpose of this video is once again to show their obsession with money, how they use their interpretation of the Bible and tithing and offerings to absolutely bring most especially Bible school students into subjection, but also apparently in this one church members too, because it's a Thursday night. I don't know, after working all day or dealing with life, to come to church and hear Kool brag, which I grabbed a few snippets of that, and talk about kind of what Gandhi did in one of the previous videos I did of Junction City. So I find it very interesting, especially up in Graham. They have this big campus with, they had 9 people graduate this last time. I've always wondered, what are all the buildings for? I guess you don't have to worry about paying electricity on them if no one's using them, but especially that chapel there at the top of the hill. When it was being built, now I'm maybe a little different. I grew up Catholic, so we went to basically like even the smallest church in our little town back in New Jersey wasn't a cathedral, but it was huge, high ceilings, ornate fixtures and moldings and stained glass and just all kinds of stuff. And once I became a born-again Christian, which happened before ever coming to NTCC, I just didn't understand it. And the place where I first went to church was just a big building with folding chairs and this one of those portable platforms. Of course, they slowly changed too. I think they're like a big mega church now, all these years later. But I never understood why all the fancy chairs up on the platform. Why the fancy podium to stand at to speak? When they built that chapel, and I don't know if the Mosses are still in the church or not, but a gentleman named, I don't even know his first name. I just know Reverend Moss. Sort of like reminds me of being in the military. It was airman this, airman that, until later on you finally found out someone's first name. And it was like that there. Reverend, brother, sister, pastor. And he was applying, like they were bragging about it, and the Davis was too. They're having gold leaf. If you see that lectern where Kool is standing and preaching, that gold on there is not painted. That is gold leaf. Okay? If you look at the impractical nature of some of the backdrop and everything, that costs money. And yet when we were going to the church there, Davis didn't believe in having soap in the bathrooms. I mean, I hope they have that now, and a place to dry your hands or paper towels or something. Very odd, but that's for another time. Right now, it's still about the money because it's how they coerce, and it's how mostly they coerce our military members to try to get them to comply in the local church and eventually to go to the Bible school. We're going to talk about things as an offshoot of all this based on some things Kool said regarding service as far as giving yourselves to God and the ministry and what it took, not just in Bible school as a student and bringing people to church and driving all over creation, never having that day of rest, ever. And so I don't know what Kool's talking about. I don't like to assume. It's very easy for me to say, well, the way it was when I was there was that, in every other church, local church, you would mostly find, except, of course, there are a lot of preachers and wives out there in the local churches who set themselves up, just like Davis did, as like kings and queens over an empire, and they think about, who they are. And their title means something. It doesn't mean anything. But for the most part, when you go out to start a church, you are hustling. You are out there getting people, and you're not doing it for the money. And I think that's why, in the eyes of the leadership of NTCC, people are seen as failures, because I think they're genuine. If there are people out there in these churches, which, side note again, I have a bad habit of that, going down all these different paths, but I'll try to bring it together. I really don't understand after all these years why some people who were in the church before me are still in when they've seen all the changes. And things I'm going to be sharing with you in the near future are old FactNet posts from 2004, things Kool said, how he mocked people on there and derided them for things. And yet they're things that now, all of a sudden, it's okay to do. So I don't know how people resolve that when you start seeing it. But I do understand the nature of a cult and that authoritarian control. And so if they don't, as we didn't for so many years, allow themselves to step back and think and question doctrines and everything. And it goes back to the whole idea of when I would sit in the Catholic Church and look up and say, why do they need all this? Who paid for all this? So yes, when you sit in Graham and you look around, look at the gold leaf, look at all the nice fixtures and things, say, why is this necessary? Why are those people wearing church robes? When did that start? So crazy. The things that money is spent on is just mind-blowing. But here in these clips, you first have Kool bragging about money he's given. You have him talking about how much they used to give in offerings. Why are there offering envelopes? Just pitch the money in. What do you care? If it's for God, why are you keeping track of it like that? Why are you judging people by that? I want you to open up your minds and think about this whole tithing doctrine, and that will be what I'll be posting about on the blog this weekend. I'm just trying to do my due diligence and research and know that if I put something up there, I've put the time into it. And so with this, we see Kool once again, and it is taken out of context in that I chopped it up from the service. If you want to hear the whole service, just go to their Facebook page. It's right there, and you'll see I'm not putting a spin on it. He said these things, and he pumped up himself. He talked to himself. I don't know how he even brings himself to do that, to tell stories. I gave this and I gave that and I did this and we used to give this much. I don't know what he's thinking to do that, but I don't care because it just proves for me that nothing has changed. He is just taken on the persona of Davis, who is the founder and his wife's dad. From there, I ended with 4 pictures, and I will add commentary when you get to that part. Thank you.
But we would lay our money down. When this one man was going to Panama to start a work, I had a special interest because I was stationed there in the military. So I went up to him and I said, I'm going to give you the first $1,000 on that work to help you get started. And I did. There was another time, I had $1,500. I went to Pastor Davis and said, sir, I just want to give this to help the work of the Lord. I didn't know it was right on time, but it was. And in all that, it was nothing for us, not just me, these other men, to give these big offerings. And he and the other guys are the ones that take care of the finances. So, just offerings. $20 or $50. How come no one ever stuffs a $100 bill in an offering? Is it because they look around and say, look at this big building, it's all taken care of, there's nothing to give to? What about the love offering to the Lord? We give as unto the Lord, not because, hey, the church just got up and said they can't pay the electric bill. We give it unto the Lord. And so what happens in this church? This church is separate from the other churches. It's a standalone church, but it's also seminary, which is separate from the organizational churches. It's exclusive. But what about those out there? There's churches to give to. They have websites. They have giving buttons you can click on and give offerings to help those that are out there. Who will give of himself abundantly unto the Lord? Just food for thought.
Can I tell you something? Keckle spent a whole bunch of time in this service talking about what you value, what you put your effort into, a lot about money. And I have to say that during my whole time in that organization, I knew nothing but people who, because women couldn't work, who were generous with the little bit that they had. When we first got to Bible school, we didn't have squat. We should have never come there. I'm going to speak about all of this over the weekend. I don't want to get too far into it or too far ahead of myself, but I should have never gotten out of the military when I did. My ex-husband probably shouldn't have when he did. All to, pursue this Bible school. And I remember we would go to fellowship with other brethren who were in school after we got permission, of course. You can't just live your life willy-nilly and go visit with whomever you please. And what touched my heart and what I will always remember is not like big elaborate dinners at the homes of the leaders of this group, but it was the bologna sandwich I had and Kool-Aid, which is kind of ironic, at the home of this little family who had, I don't know how many kids they had running around, 2 or 3. And we had 2, So you're talking about 4 adults, and, well, my girls were very little, so they weren't having much, but it really touched me. These people were not spending their money elaborately. Nobody was taking trips or going anywhere. Keckle talks in this message about having to put aside anniversary plans. La-di-da. Good grief. But I was remembering that Davis taught in one of his classes. He was touting the Pettits. You probably know, anybody who knows Alice, once you meet her, you don't forget her. She's a hoot. I wish they weren't in still. It really bothers me, but I don't know why they're still there. I hope they'll think about why they're still there. But Davis was saying in his classes in the Bible school, he was telling us the attitude we should have when we get to school is one of not staying, but of wanting to leave. I would say that we for sure had that mentality. We didn't have anything. And we didn't have a desire to have anything. Our desire was really to win souls. We spoke about it even before we came into this organization. And he said they lived in this old trailer and they had newspaper up on the windows instead of curtains. And he said, if you're in Bible school, you don't need a phone. And cell phones were just really becoming the thing then. So we're talking about, early 90s. That was hard to think about because we wanted to do what the man of God said. But we had 2 little kids. We had families that wanted to stay in touch. And now you can look back and see. He wanted to cut us off from everybody. He wanted to see probably 2 who would comply with his crazy ideas for controlling. And so we did that. The funny thing was, I don't remember if we knew ahead of time or if we found out later. We moved into that crappy trailer that the Pettits had lived in, which is kind of really funny at the time. But it wasn't funny to live in. It was utter gutter. It was terrible. And we had our 2 little girls in there. Sometimes I walked into the bathroom and snails had come up through the floor. And there were mice scratching away. And there were ceilings falling in. In the back door one conference, we tied a sturdy jump rope from the door handle, from the doorknob to the drawer handle in the bathroom across the hallway. If anybody tried to break in our place, they would have been highly disappointed. Highly. So we had done all the things. We had crappy furniture. We had nothing. We were living the Bible school life. We were trying to put aside money to leave and not have things. Not even basic things. We didn't even have a landline because that was his thing. You didn't need to be paying for a phone. And if you look at the picture there, you'll see where, because I looked it up on Google Maps the other night and there it was, that same crappy trailer park. I don't think that trailer is there. And the reason I know that is because there were new owners that took over the park. I think after we'd been living there, I don't know. I want to say I don't know. Maybe a year, maybe not. And a lady came through to do an inspection. She was like, wow, this place is really clean and it's a really awful place to live in. I think we can find you something else, but it's a little bit further out in Roy, which was very rural, and I think it kind of still is. But comparatively speaking, it was a big, double or triple wide, and it was more like a modular home, really. Had quite a large amount of space. But again, we were only there for a short time, and then we went to Pittsburgh in the winter. But anyway, when we wanted to make a phone call, like there was a time where different things happened that I had to let Reverend Keckle know, had to do with getting to class or something. I had to leave the trailer and make sure that one of the neighbors, who was a sister, could watch my girls, so I could walk across Pacific Highway, Pacific Avenue, whatever it's called, to the 7-Eleven. You can see how far that is, to make a phone call at the phone booth. If I needed to call family, I had to call from there and then walk back. And the insanity of that just flooded my brain the other night. What were we I can't even say it. I can't finish the sentence. What were we thinking? I know. We were trying to be as devoted to God and the program of God as we possibly could. And that's why when I hear Keckle give messages like this, and Davis did the same thing. In fact, the last notes that I have from the last conference I ever went to, he was saying the same thing. It's always questioning your devotion. And yet, how many times have you seen, it doesn't matter if Keckle gave money for something. It doesn't matter if they have people over their house or give you things now and then. It has to do with the souls, right? Which you rarely hear spoken of. And they definitely don't direct their live streams to anyone who might be listening, because anyone listening is all the other church members and preachers, if you look at it. And he's deriding them, really, and questioning their values. The preachers out on the field, too. He has had many services that I have clips from about that. And I think maybe they're doing it now. Maybe the Keckles get up on Sunday morning and go pick people up and bring them to church. Is that what they do? Because why wouldn't they? Are they inviting anyone to church? I don't know. They have other people pick them up, or, it's not to say like everyone needs a ride. But sometimes there are people that only have one car per family, and maybe the other person doesn't want to go. And you're anxious to get them there, so you go pick them up. It's just all these things. You live in a crappy place. You subject your children to. I mean, if it wasn't for my family and Brian's family sending gifts and things for the girls on holidays and their birthdays, they wouldn't have really had anything at all. I spoke with someone recently, and her story has just stayed with me, because she was saying one Christmas she was hoping that none of the kids at school asked her child what they got for Christmas. Now, to me, I don't care about any of that. I never have. Maybe because my family was well off and we had things. But I don't put a value on it. But when it comes to kids, it's different. And I could totally relate to that. And so, dear friend, whoever you are that's still in the organization, dear person, whoever you are that's considering going or you've just started going, to those of you who are out, these are hard things to grapple with, even though they're in the past, and even though we've moved on and we're pressing toward a mark to make our lives better every single day. This is a shared experience that we all had, was lack of money and lack of earning power. Because if you missed services. You couldn't do anything to miss a service. That questioned you too. You were in between a rock and a hard place, and that's right where they want you, because they cannot preach these things unless they do that. They know precisely where you're at. They know precisely what you can and cannot do. Keckle can come out with all these little fancy little programs called Ignite and whatever. But when it comes down to it, you're probably doing what you're supposed to be doing, what you thought this whole thing was about. You thought you were called to the ministry. You thought you were going to be led by a Holy Spirit. And you found out it's not you, it's the organization that will tell you what to do, how to do it, how high to jump, and you better do it, or you will suffer the wrath. Anyway, there'll be more. But the rest of it will be in writing on the blog over the weekend, so stay tuned for that. And as always, you can contact me through the blog, through the contact form. If you put anything here on YouTube, I forget if I'll make it so that you can put comments, but you can also just message me privately. Okay, have a great weekend. Bye.